In the midst of all the current political fuss, there's an important story about Poland's journey in the past 30 years that's not getting the attention it deserves. Poland has actually been growing a lot since 1989 and is getting closer to Western Europe in terms of economic strength. The Polish economy is turning into a real success story in Europe. Starting from 1995, Poland has been the fastest growing big economy in the world among countries at a similar development level. It's even outpacing economic powerhouses in Asia like South Korea, Singapore, and Taiwan. So what's the secret behind Poland's success? Are there any lessons here for its neighbors? And what does Poland need to keep doing to stay on track in the next few decades? Stick around to find out. The secret to Poland's success. To really grasp the big deal here, let's take a moment to remember that for more than 1,000 years, Poland and the rest of Central and Eastern Europe weren't exactly stars in the economic game. The country pretty much hung out on the edges of the European economy. Even within its borders, Poles couldn't quite get everyone on the same page to kickstart a super dynamic economy. So there's this guy named Adam Smith who was really into how economies work. Back in the 1700s, he wasn't too happy with Poland because they weren't making much stuff other than basic household things. According to him, a country needs more than that to do well. Because of this, Poland's GDP wasn't doing very great when compared to countries in Western Europe. From the 1600s until pretty recently, it was usually less than half of what Western Europe was making on average. Jumping to 1991, which wasn't too long ago, Poland had a rough time after the communism era ended. People there were earning way less money than the average German, like only about a third of what Germans were making. And if you count the actual value of money, it was even less, around a tenth. It was really tough times for the Polish. Back then, Poles were earning even less than the inhabitants of Gabon, Ukraine, or Suriname. In 1989, there were a few experts willing to wager on Poland's prospective economic triumph. Modern success. Surprisingly, almost 3 decades later, Poland has emerged as the most prosperous economy in Europe by a wide margin. Since 1989, its GDP per capita has surged by nearly 150%, outpacing all other countries on the continent. For comparison, the Czech Republic saw just a 75% increase in per capita incomes. Hungary experienced a meager 50% rise, and the Eurozone's progress was below 40%. In terms of purchasing power, Poland's GDP per capita escalated even more rapidly, from 10,300 in 1990 to over 28,000 in 2018. In 2018, something pretty cool happened in Poland. Their average income reached more than 2/3 of what people earn on average in the Eurozone. That's a bunch of countries using the same currency. What makes this even cooler is that Poland only joined the EU in 2004 and had to shake off the effects of communist rule that lasted for many years. Only Poland did something that no other country from their part of the world has done. They joined a special list of countries that are considered really advanced when it comes to their economy. With this, Poland became the first post-communist country to join the FTSE Russell list of developed countries. With the strategic moves they made to reset their economy, it's no surprise that they're moving up in the big leagues after dealing with all those old challenges from the past. The backbone of Poland's resurgence. This success story happened even though Poland doesn't have many natural resources. And the best part is, it's not just some inflated numbers. The country has actually kept its debts low, both public and private. What's cooler is that this economic growth hasn't just benefited a few, it's been like a rising tide lifting everyone's boat. For the first time in Poland's history, its economy is backed by a society that's inclusive, fair, well-educated, and where people can move up the social ladder. This has given a chance for everyone to do well. Actually, Poland is the only ex-communist country where everybody's income has grown faster than what the cool G7 countries are doing. Unlike many other fast-growing economies around the world, Poland has managed to catch up with the West while staying a strong democracy. This strength is pretty clear when you consider that Poland has had 17 different governments from all sides of the political spectrum since 1990 when the transition began. But how did this country, which used to lag behind for centuries, suddenly become the star of Europe's economic growth? After 1989, Poland actually succeeded for the first time by doing some smart things. They shook things up with a big economic makeover in 1990-91, built important institutions fast, sorted out their foreign debts, put a lot into education, and made privatization open and clear. Poland stands out because it didn't create oligarchs like most other countries in Central and Eastern Europe. When the post-communist transition began, things like your last name, hometown, or family didn't determine your success. Nowadays, all of Poland's billionaires earn their wealth through their own businesses and hard work, and not inherited fortunes, the catalyst to rapid growth. Here's the big question. If good things happen in the economy because of smart economic moves, then what was behind those smart moves in the first place? Back in the day, Poland was a classic example of a setup where only a few people benefited. World War II played a part, and the real game changer was the whole communism thing. It smashed up the old-fashioned, outdated ways and made room for a more open society. This new and inclusive society didn't really show up until 1989, though. It was buried under all the weirdness and messed up stuff from the planned economic days. But when the whole socialist system fell apart, it set the stage for the crazy economic turnaround that came after. Here's the thing. This shouldn't really make Poland's performance all that different from countries in the same boat, like the Czech Republic and Hungary. Funny enough, people in those places were actually better off than their counterparts in Poland back in the communist days. Another thing is that all these countries, including the other ones that used to be in the Warsaw Pact, were all on the same page. They all wanted to be like Western Europe and join the European Union. Now, let's talk about why Poland aced this transition thing. The interesting part is that pretty much the whole time of change, even with all those different governments, one big reason for Poland's success was the top-notch skills of the people making the rules. It was all the money experts like finance ministers and money wizards at the central bank who did the heavy lifting. Unlike their Eastern counterparts in countries like Ukraine or Russia, Polish officials, even if they belonged to different parties, knew exactly where they were headed. It helped that almost every economic decision maker in Poland after 1989 had studied in Western countries, learning modern economics. On the flip side, until 2002, there wasn't a single Bulgarian finance minister who could even speak English, just to give you an example. Will Poland continue to grow? Poland's impressive GDP growth is making waves, but to keep moving closer to Western standards, they'll need a fresh approach. Some economists are calling this the Warsaw Consensus. If they put the Warsaw Consensus into action, Poland could grow by over 3% each year and catch up with the West in the next generation. So, Poland's amazing progress can keep rolling. For this to work, Poland has to stay inclusive as a society. Surprisingly, the current government, despite causing some internal conflicts, has actually done well here. For instance, they started a program where families get money for their kids, which has pretty much wiped out extreme poverty. They also bumped up the minimum wage and made taxes fairer. The Polish success story shares a lot in common with how Germany bounced back after the war. You can especially see this when you think about how including everyone both socially and economically played a big role in their success. Luckily, history doesn't always move in just one direction. That's why it's interesting to wonder what Germany and Western Europe can learn from Poland's recent experiences and how well they're doing now. One really important thing is education. In Poland, high school students today are just as educated as their German peers, even though Germany spends over 60% more on each student. Another important aspect is the existence of open markets. Poland's economic success is like a blueprint showing how the EU's single market can be a win for everyone. Nowadays, Germany sells more than twice as much stuff to Poland compared to what it sells to Russia. Despite their success, there are some well-known things that could mess up Poland's good times. The population is getting older, there aren't as many young people, and they're not coming up with a lot of new ideas. But the big problem that could really mess things up is if the European Union gets weaker. Without the EU, Poland could go back to its not-so-great times in its history and end up being kind of on the sidelines of Europe again. That's where it spent a really long time in the past, and if they're not careful, it could potentially be in their future. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe for more. Where money matters, we'll see you on the next one.